Hello and welcome to Joy in Our Town. I'm Kelly Waldeyer. Today we're going to be talking about the Glen Mills schools and some of the educational offerings that are available to students there. Joining me is Enrique Josephs. Enrique, thanks so much for coming in today.
Thank you, Kelly.
So before we get into a little bit about the school, can you tell us about yourself and then how you got involved with Glen Mills schools?
Well, my position at the school, I am the Director of Admissions. I'm responsible for intake of students, staff members all over the country that interview students and their parents. I'm responsible for the community-based programs, the health center, the dental center, and the support staff that deal with intake and things like that. I have been at Glen Mills for about 34 years.
Wow.
I actually found out about the school from a very close friend who was hired and was coming up for his last interview. We lived in New York, and he said to me, would you like to go for a ride to Pennsylvania? And I knew nothing about Pennsylvania except that there was hunters and they tipped cows. Those are the only things I knew. So I took a ride with Tony, my buddy, and 34 years later, we're both still working at the school.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's quite a lot. Now, you just mentioned, a whole bunch of different facets of this school. That it seems like it's a really expansive place.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about the Glen Mills schools and what your mission is?
Well, the Glen Mills schools was founded in 1826 as the Philadelphia House of Refuge. We are the oldest existing program of our kind in the nation and quite possibly in the world. It was founded as a school, as a place for young people. Originally, the Quakers were involved in reforming the prison systems back in the 1800s, and they wanted to take juveniles outside of the adult prisons. They had debtors' prisons and things like that. So they founded the House of Refuge. The House of Refuge's mission has been to provide education, job skills, change behavior, those types of things, and we're still doing that mission 188 years later. We moved to our present location in Delaware County in 1889. We just celebrated our 125th anniversary last September, and that's Glen Mills Schools.
Can you tell us a little bit about some of the criteria? You mentioned you are in charge of admissions.
Yes.
What kind of students are coming to the schools? For
our residential program, we bring in young men from all over the United States and several foreign countries. The criteria for admissions, anywhere between 13 to 18 years old, young men who are able to deal with what we call socialized delinquents, able to deal with in groups. The exclusionary factors are basically, we don't work with young men who are fire starters, arsonists. We don't work with those who are sex offenders, and we don't work with those who would not be able to handle a group setting, such as Glen Mills. We provide all sorts of services for the young men, everything from education, helping them to change their behaviors. We have 25 career and technical programs, everything from optics to masonry. We built a 18-hole golf course as our largest career technical program, and our students learn 3 trades in our golf course. They learn small engines repair, golf course maintenance, and golf house management. So it's a school of opportunities. That's the number one thing I would tell you. You mentioned that there are some behaviors that would disqualify someone for admission. So you're not going to take people with it. Are there any other behaviors that would, or anything in their past that would disqualify a student from being at Glen Mills? Well, those are the main behaviors. We kind of take, in terms of our admissions, it's a case-by-case basis. So we look at the young men, we'll interview the parent and the student. We have admissions coordinators all over the country, and we don't discriminate by race, ethnicity, religion, anything like that. But we do look for young people that we think that can make it in the program in terms of our admissions.
Now, you used to be called Glen Mill School for Boys, correct? But
Yes.
but now it's open to more than just boys?
Oh, yes. Because of the various programs we offer, we have a community-based component where we work with both young men and young ladies on a daily basis. We have a shelter care component. We have an alternative ed program. We do reintegration in Philadelphia County. So in terms of our community-based programs, we do have both young men and young women.
Are those who are attending your schools, are they considered at risk or behaviorally unsound?
Well, they residentially, for the most part, we are both a delinquent and or dependent residential placement. They would be considered at risk. We don't like to use that term as much, but for the most part, the young men that are sent to us are sent by the courts. They're court ordered. They could be involved in various delinquency acts. They could be children in need of supervision, those types of things. So yes, they have some problems. Our number one thing is to assess what their needs are and provide the services.
If the courts are sending some of them to you, do you have the right to reject one of them, or how does that process
actually,
work?
we do have our admissions coordinators are the first that deal with the referral. And if they don't meet the criteria, the worst thing to do is to set a child up to fail. So we want to make sure that we can provide the services for the young people that we work with. So we do at times, and I hate to use the word reject, but we do have that in our arsenal. Yes.
Can you give us a little bit about what a new student might experience? You know, what their surroundings are, what the start of their term, if you will, at Glen Mills would be like?
Well, once a young man is committed to us and they're transported to our campus, the first thing that our coordinators are responsible to kind of prep them for what to expect. And prepping them speaks about norms. Norms are expected behaviors. Glen Mills Schools, part of the strength of our program is our normative environment. So if you were to walk on our campus today, you would notice several things. You would notice the young men moving around freely. They're not locked up. There's no bars, gates, or anything like that. You would notice that everybody waves and acknowledges you. And that doesn't happen out on the streets or out in the world, as the kids say. So there are high expectations of our students. Our coordinators, their first job is not only to interview students and their parents, but also to explain the program, what our expectations are. There are several fundamental norms that we have at Glen Mills. No one has a right to hurt another person. Education in the classroom are sacred. You never do anything to bring attention to yourself, the unit you live in, or the school. You take pride in the school, and a Glen Mills student is always a gentleman. Those are the basic things that we expect from all of our students, but there are hundreds of other norms, and norms change as time goes on. So you will see that our landscaping is well managed. There are no little ruts in the grass because you don't walk on the grass, you walk on the sidewalk. You'll notice there is no graffiti. You'll notice that if there's a piece of paper, even staff will pick up the paper. It's not just these norms aren't just for the students. They're both for staff and students.
Okay.
But I'll get back to what to expect.
Right.
So the first night that a student comes in, he's going to be orientated by not only a staff member, but by students. We have a student government. It's called the Battling Bulls Club. And to be a member, you have to demonstrate positive behavior. So day one, you come in, you would be assigned a counselor and also a big brother. A big brother's job is to kind of take you under his wing and kind of explain the program to you from a standpoint of a student. He would start explaining the norms, what the expectations are, and the counselor would do the same thing. The counselor would contact the parents, share that Johnny is in this unit, that type of thing, and that's how it first starts. High expectations, and that is what we do with the students that first come in.
How important is this structure and having these clear expectations, but also making the students feel safe? How important is that to their well-being?
The structure is very important because everybody knows what the boundaries are. And the interesting thing is, as one student leaves, because we bring young men in every day and young men leave every day, as one student is discharged, another student comes in. So there's a continuity there. So I'm a new student. I hear, you're my big brother. You explain the norms and things like that. And then 2 months later, I'm someone's big brother. So I am explaining the norms. So it's kind of an oral tradition, but it's also, it's the continuity in the program and the expectations of both staff and students on each other.
Let's talk a little bit about how the Delaware County Intermediate Unit connects with you guys and is part of referring students or getting involved with the students.
Well, Delaware County Intermediate is our LEA when it comes to our alternative education program.
Okay.
Alternative ed is alternative education for disruptive youth. We service 3 counties, Delaware County, Montgomery County, and Chester County. And we're able to provide, it's a day program where young men from public high schools who have met certain criteria in terms of their behaviors are then able to be interviewed by Glen Mills alternative ed staff, and they can come upwards of until they meet certain criteria to be able to be sent back to their public schools. The IU is basically it's kind of like a consortium that would do a lot of the testings and things like that for us for these students who are alt ed students. They don't actually refer the students. Their individual schools refer them to us.
The goal is to get those students to go back to their other schools, but
yes.
There's some situation that's addressed in the meantime.
Yeah, it's mostly about behavior. These students have done have demonstrated some sort of inappropriate behaviors in their public schools. The schools have to try to mitigate those behaviors prior to sending them to any kind of placement like ours for alt ed.
What would happen if a student didn't comply with the rules or didn't go along with the, whatever was set up by the DCIU or the Glen Mills schools?
Well, we have an extensive interview process prior to a student actually coming to us. Parents are brought on campus. They get to see what the program's like. And we try to get the parents to basically agree that this is probably the best situation for their student. So again, I don't like to say that word rejection, but if it's not a good fit, everybody knows up front what the expectations are, and we try our best to work with every student that actually comes to us.
So we've talked a little bit about who might be there, but let's get into this, the nitty-gritty of what the curriculum is and why it is so successful, because that's really why you have such a long history of helping all of these students that have come through your program.
Well, the first and foremost thing that we do is deal with behaviors. Behaviors are paramount. You can't teach a class if everything is going crazy and students are acting out. So our normative systems, our normative environment, the fact that negative behavior is confronted, positive behavior is given strokes, and we sanction and we also reward behaviors. So that's the first and foremost thing. The second thing is to provide a consistent academic, vocational, social, and then athletics for our students. So our students have an opportunity to grow in all four areas. They can grow in the classroom, they can grow in the career technical programs, they can grow socially through our student government, and they can also get involved in athletics. And when you have all those opportunities for the young men, it can be a successful thing.
Do you find, based on your own experience, that students had these four elements or portions of them prior to coming to the school?
Well, I can relate with one young man who is now, I coached him back in the 90s. And when he came, he was told he would never be anything by the folks back home, that he would never amount to anything, that he would always be a loser, that kind of thing. This young man is now the dean of students at one of the charter schools in Philadelphia.
Oh, wow.
He's raising three beautiful young sons, and he exemplifies what we're trying to do with the young men at Glen Mills. So yeah, our students can get success. And there's three things that our executive director, Dr. Randy Ireson, always says. We work on character, which is behaviors, changing behavior. We work on competencies, which is all the different programs we have at Glen Mills. And then the last thing is we want to give our students the confidence to go out in the world and tackle any problem and succeed.
Is there any truth to the claim that part of your structure is based around this, like, gang style, they call it? This gang-type social standards?
Well, I think what we always say to young men that come at Glen Mills is that there's only one gang at Glen Mills, and it's our Battling Bulls Club. Okay. Battling Bulls that's our mascot. Right. And because a lot of our students are coming from gang situations, we basically say, look, at Glen Mills, we all work together. And if you want to try to bring that gang stuff here, no, we're not going to let that happen. You're going to become a member of our Bulls Club. Bulls Club is our student government. We have 12 separate cottages that our students live in, and each cottage has their own Bulls Club. They then send representatives to a weekly meeting, and then we have a campus Bulls executive committee who's actually involved in running the school. They meet with administrators every week and are able to give feedback and suggestions as to things we're doing, and they get kind of the ground level of what's going on with the school on a week-to-week basis. The Bulls are key to Glen Mills' success.
This curriculum is obviously impacting these people's lives. So let's talk about some of the special programs that are offered, like evidence-based programs for juveniles is one of them?
Yes.
What is moral recognition therapy, too? Well,
moral recognition therapy is a cognitive behavioral therapy that we provide for all of our students. Cognitive behavioral therapy is a way for our students to kind of reach back in their past, find out why they did certain things. And it's also a way for them to look to change their behaviors by discovering the reasons why they did what they did. Along with MRT, moral recognition therapy, we have a companion, which is an anger management, coping with anger.
Okay.
Coping with anger allows our students to understand the triggers that may have affected them with going off and losing their temper, and gives them ways to mitigate those triggers, gives them strategies to change what they've always done in terms of losing their temper and their anger. We also have a parenting and family values, which teaches them how to be good parents, responsibilities of a parent, but then it also gives them an understanding of what their parents have to go through. Okay. We also have Botvin Life Skills. Life Skills is a junior high school and high school curriculum that is anti-drug, anti-violence, and it's also one of the evidence-based programs on the National Human Health Registry in terms of evidence-based programs. We have competency-based programs also. Drug and alcohol educational program, which is a curriculum that our students who are in need of drug and alcohol education. We have gun violence reduction program. Our gun violence reduction program is modeled after the state of Pennsylvania's Bureau Juvenile Justice's program, and it's a way for young people to understand the impact of gun violence on their communities, on their families, those types of things. We have a health and nutrition, a wellness program.
Okay.
Wellness is for young men with BMIs of over 30, and it teaches them about nutrition, exercise, portion control, those types of things. We have a impact of crime curriculum where our young men come in and they're kind of asked to understand what they did and the effects on the victim. Really trying to get some empathy out of our young men to understand that what you did affects not only the victim but the community. Part of that curriculum asks our young people to write a letter of apology to their victim, things like that. So those are some of the programs that we offer for our young men, along with 25 career technical programs. We have young men who are working with our dentists, opticians. As a matter of fact, we just hired 2 former students who were with us 15 years ago to be our new optical lab instructors.
Wow.
So kind of full turnaround, yes.
Cool.
It's wonderful. So those are the type of programmings that we offer.
Some of these ones that you mentioned, especially the ones early on about, like coping with anger and maybe that one trying to understand things from the perspective of, whoever you might have hurt or other people involved in the situation. Do you find that these courses are really important because maybe as young people, our instinct isn't to think that way. It's not to, fully grasp why we're doing something. And maybe it helps them not only just get to the bottom, but remove some of the guilt that they might feel because they begin to understand the circumstances they're in?
Yes. The state of Pennsylvania asks all providers to basically be able to have a balance and restorative justice program. We have to be able to not only hold young people accountable, but also we have to make sure that they make the community whole, whether it's by paying back restitution, community service, those types of things. So those types of programs help our young men understand that it's not just about me. What you've done affects everybody. It affects your family because you're now away from home, and your family has to deal with the fact that you're not there.
Let's talk a little bit more about some of these programs like the drug and alcohol and the gun violence and the wellness and nutrition. How important is it to just hit those issues head on instead of maybe walking around them like some programs would?
Well, drug and alcohol affects a lot of families in this country. Our students need to understand that addiction is, and drugs can be the downfall of them or their family members. It also helps them understand why they do what they do in terms of use of drugs. The instructor makes sure to make the class and the curriculum basically something that's an everyday, a real world type of curriculum. So we have speakers come in and speak to their truth and what they were involved in. Our other programs like gun violence reduction, the proliferation of guns in this country and the easy access for our young people to weapons, they have to understand that their use of weapons, use of guns, how it impacts not only themselves, their families, the community, as a whole. So these are very important things to bring to the forefront. Remind them of what's really happening in their communities, that a lot of times these things are what's deteriorating their communities.
Can you give us an example of, I mean, you've mentioned several students that have come back, that have changed their lives, that are now doing extraordinary things, but can you think of maybe one or two other examples of a student that really stuck out in your mind in terms of how they have changed and grown because of the Glen Mills School?
Well, I'll give you an example of, this is more or less a high-profile student who actually came to Glen Mills from a fairly affluent community and jurisdiction. At first, he didn't want to be there. He tried to run away, those types of things. But he realized that people really cared about him. He stayed. He played football for us. He was track star football. Ended up staying for an extra year, basically deciding to finish his high school career with us. He went on to Temple University, broke a lot of records. He got drafted by the Baltimore Ravens. He won a Super Bowl his first year as a rookie. The young man's name is Bernard Pierce, and recently he was traded to another team, but he's had a remarkable success because of his hard work, because of his parents really, their prayers, and they're staying on top of him, and because of the staff at Glen Mills. We have a wonderful staff. We have very dedicated people who've been there for many years. They're not there for the money. They're there to help change lives. I always say that Glen Mills is a jewel in the Commonwealth crown and a national treasure for the United States of America.
Wow, and you guys are a nonprofit, correct?
We're a nonprofit, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
If our viewers want more information, because it seems like there's a whole lot more that we could talk about, but we're out of time, where could they go for more information?
They could go to our website, www.glenmillschool.org.
Enrique, thank you for sharing with us today. I know I didn't know half that.
Thank you very much, Glen.
Thank you all for joining us today. This has been Join Our Town. I hope you learned something, and we will see you next time.